Hi, and welcome back to the Study NFE's Daily With series. In today's video, we'll be talking about GTE in Australia. As you probably know, GTE is Genuine Temporary Entrant. Your case officer, if you're planning to apply for a student visa to Australia, will look very closely at GTE evaluations. Today, we'll try to understand the most important part of GTE that pertains to your student visa application to Australia. The first thing your case officer will look at is your circumstances in your home country. You must have really strong reasons for not studying the same course if it is available in your own country. These reasons, whether they are articulated in your GTE statement or in your interview, must be very convincing and must convince the case officer that you have good reason to study said course in Australia. Also, while considering your circumstances in your home country, the case officer must be convinced that your ties in your home country are sufficient to motivate you to return once you've completed your studies in Australia. Ties are usually family ties. That means your immediate family, your parents, your siblings, and also your other family ties, along with community ties and economic ties. Overall, the case officer must be convinced that there is enough in India to incentivize you to return here after you've completed your studies. Also, when your case officer is looking at your circumstances in your home country, they will also compare your potential economic circumstances in Australia to your economic circumstances in your home country. Another thing that the case officer will ask himself or herself when they're looking at your circumstances in your home country is whether your potential financial situation in Australia will prevent you from returning to your home country. This means, in simple language, will your earnings prevent you from returning to your home country? Next, the case officer will also look very closely at your circumstances in Australia. One of the first things they will ask themselves is whether you have any ties in Australia that will prevent you from returning. Familial ties, if you have a sibling or any other relative in Australia. Economic ties, your financial situation, whether it prevents you from returning, will again be taken into consideration while evaluating your circumstances in Australia. If you're applying with a dependent, then there is another question that arises. The case officer must be convinced that your relationship is not solely for the purpose of traveling and settling in Australia. If the case officer, while evaluating your application, comes to the conclusion that you have entered into marriage solely for the purpose of traveling to Australia and settling there, then your GTE evaluation will probably turn out negative. One more thing, when case officers are looking at your potential circumstances in Australia, is that if there is any indication at all that indicates that you have applied for a student visa solely for the purpose of settling down in Australia, this too will result in a negative GTE evaluation. Finally, when the case officer is looking at your potential circumstances in Australia, they will evaluate how much you know, how much research you've done. For instance, how much you know about the country itself. Also, how much you know about the university that you have applied to and been accepted in. Finally, how much you know about the course that you're going to study. Remember, as a well-informed student, you should be aware of all the most important facts connected to Australia, your university, and the course you will be studying. Next, the case officer will also look very closely at the value of your course to your future. Firstly, they will ask themselves, is your current course something that matches your previous studies? Though they will allow for reasonable stream changes, drastic and completely different stream changes will probably result in a negative GTE evaluation. Also, they will look at the value of your course in terms of employment when you return to your home country. They must be convinced that the course you will study in Australia will result in gainful employment once you return to your country. Next, while looking at the value of your course in relation to your future, they will ask themselves whether the amount of money you will earn in your home country, how it compares to what you will earn in Australia. If there's a drastic difference, this too may not have a positive impact on your GTE evaluation. Lastly, case officers will look at your previous immigration history if you have one. Firstly, any previous applications to Australia which were refused will go against your GTE evaluation. However, if you've never applied to Australia for a student visa before, but you have a travel history to Australia or even other advanced countries, this will work positively with your GTE evaluation. Finally, let's understand a few really important points very closely related to the GTE. The first thing you must understand is that GTE is not a checklist. GTE is not for the purpose of compiling positive and negative points against your application. Your application will be adjudicated holistically. Secondly, your application will be judged on the balance of probabilities. That means the officer will look at the probability of one thing versus the opposing thing. For example, the officer will compare the probability of your returning after you complete your studies versus the probability of your not returning. Whichever seems more probable will be taken into consideration by your case officer. The last thing you need to understand about GTE. Overall, what you need to understand about GTE is if the case officer thinks that you are not a genuine temporary entrant. That means if you do not intend to return to your home country and settle there after your studies, then your application will be refused. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked this video, like, share and subscribe. We'll be coming back soon with more videos about studying in Australia and other countries. To know more about Australia, connect with Study in a Fees at studyinafees.io. Till then, all the best and take care.